Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. Money Lion MMA is returning off of a Thanksgiving break, bringing you guys some action, some picks, and some juice for the UFC Austin card coming up here to us on, it'll be December by then. It'll be December 2nd. It's UFC Austin. Fights are taking place in the Moody Center over in Austin, Texas. And the headlining event is, of course, Tsarukyan versus Dariush. Two guys trying to get themselves into title contention. In Dariush's case, getting back into title contention from his previous failures. So this will be very interesting, no doubt about it. But quickly, before we get too far into things, we'd like to quickly discuss the previous card. Previous card saw Paul Craig fighting Brendan Allen, and Jose's 5-weight Brendan Allen came in there, got the job done. Paul Craig gets the L. Michael Morales versus Jake Matthews. It was a fight where we both agreed on Michael Morales. Go ahead and take your bet card to the table for that one. Our Moneyline MMA lock hit yet again on the year. Chase Hooper was a guy that I picked. Jose did not. Got the job done. So it was overall a good night. And then one of my other big, heavier confidence fighters, Peyton Talbot. Jose also agreed on him getting the dub. So let's move forward from those fights. Moving on here now to this Saturday. This is not a pay-per-view card, but Jose and I were chatting before the fight, before the recording here. This is a big, there's some really significant fights on this card. Considering this is a, like I said, not a pay-per-view event, I really think some of the fights on here are very impressive for a fight night event. So that being said, without further delay, let's get straight on into things. As always, we're going to bring you guys our picks from 5-weight to 1-weight, with 5-weight being the most confident, 1-weight being the least confident. We'll give you guys our most confident picks outright. Unlike the channels that are around here that dilly-dally around and talk about this and that, or they talk about the fights in order, we're giving you our most confident picks outright. So go ahead and come back to our videos every week in which there are UFC fights to hear our most confident picks right away. And for this Saturday, we're going to go start right off with my most confident pick of this Saturday, and we're going to look at the co-main event. This is a fight that, initially it was supposed to be Bobby Green versus Dan Hooker. It is now Bobby Green versus Jalen Turner. And for me, the 5-weight is being laid on Bobby Green. I'm very confident here in Bobby Green, and it's for a few reasons. And almost none of the reasons lead to just direct advantages inside the cage. I think by time these guys get in the cage, if they even do, Bobby Green will have already gotten multiple quote-unquote wins along the way, with one of those being the mental aspect of things. Jalen Turner's coming into this fight off short notice, and according to the appearance he made on Rampage Jackson's, I believe it was Rampage Jackson's podcast, he initially declined the UFC's offer to do this fight, to step in short notice, and the UFC said, "Hey, we got an extra bag for you. We'll make sure your wallet is full." We'll say, right? So Jalen Turner then thought about it, and he's like, "You know what? You might have to take this shot, for that kind of money." And I don't think that's a good mindset to have going into this fight at all. I don't think Bobby Green is necessarily like worlds better than some of the fighters Jalen Turner has seen in the UFC, but man, I think Bobby Green is dominating as of late. And I think that honestly is going to continue. I think he's a consistent guy that you know what you're going to get out of him. He's got a submission win and a KO win in his last 2 fights. And Jalen Turner's coming off 2 losses. Not to mention, he is coming off losses from a different weight class. So, yeah, that being said, man, I don't like Jalen Turner's weight cut issues. I just think he has extreme issues getting down to the weight class that he's going to be. I believe it's 170. Or no, it's going to be 155 even. So I don't know, man. That to me is difficult for a guy as big as him to get down to 155. No, thank you. On that short of notice, especially around Thanksgiving, I don't know, man. Too many factors here with the money side of it. Thanksgiving, he has to cut all this weight. There's no way Jalen Turner is cutting less than like 20 to 25 pounds. And that is so much to put your body through. So I don't mean to ramble. I want Jose to get his points in here. Let's see what Jose's got on this fight. But for those reasons, man, I'm very confident that Bobby Green just needs to stay the course to what he's been doing, and he'll get the win.
Yes, so for this fight, yeah, I have Jalen Turner. He's actually my five way, and the reason why I have him so high is because Bobby Green's last two fights, he did that was an impressive first round KO to Grant Dawson, and then Tony Ferguson, like Tony Ferguson, I don't know, man, he's just kind of getting washed up now, so I don't even know if that fight even matters. Like him versus Patty, I'm still on the fence of how I'm gonna bet that one, but for like the Grant Dawson one, I will say that was a really good KO, but it was a I felt like we just didn't see enough of it, but maybe we didn't have to. And I think Jalen Turner, rightfully so, should have reconsidered this matchup because, yeah, Bobby Green is extremely dangerous. But the last two fights, Jalen Turner, he's only come off, like, on the unfortunate side of a split decision, both to Matus Gamrot and Dan Hooker. And he's shown that he can take some damage, so I don't know if he's going to get knocked out as easily as Grant Dawson has. He has been KO'd 3 times but the last time he's been KO'd was in 2018 to Vicente Luque. So it's been a minute, and he has the potential to finish Bobby Green. I think this fight is not going to make it to the end of the 3 rounds. Both guys have high finishing rates. If Bobby Green does win this, he's going to dominate all 3 rounds. But I just don't think that with how late of a notice this is, and the size, the matchup, Jalen Turner is a big, tall guy, and you did mention about the weight cutting issues. I'm not too worried about it. Like, a lot of these guys have struggled to make 155 always, including, Khabib. So I think Jalen Turner, as long as he makes weight, I think that's the most important thing. And I think just the matchup stylistically, I think it kind of favors Jalen Turner. I think he may even be able to get a submission off Bobby Green. Or even a TKO, but for this one, and Bobby Green has been submitted only twice out of his 14 losses, but also age difference too. Jalen Turner, younger and bigger guy. I think I'm going with him. He is the favorite, minus 265, while surprisingly Bobby Green's the plus 200 underdog. I think that's just crazy. I think it definitely should have been a lot closer. But that being said, yeah, I have Jalen Turner as my 5-weight. I just think he's going to be a little more to handle than what Grant Dawson and Tony Ferguson brought to Bobby Green.
Gotcha. And that's totally fair. I agree. Jalen Turner's a bigger test than, excuse me, sorry about that, the previous 2 opponents. The one fight was a no contest. Where he against Jared Gordon. But yeah, Tony Ferguson, Grant Dawson, there's no doubt I would take Jalen Turner to be the harder opponent of those guys. But that to me just isn't the benchmark for Bobby Green. He's been around for so long and fought guys like Islam Makhachev, Rafael Fiziev, Thiago Moises. And granted, he hasn't been able to get wins against most of those. That's literally the top echelon of the lightweight division. And you couldn't convince me that Jalen Turner would get those wins either at his current state. And Jalen Turner's best win is maybe against Jamie Mularkey, I guess you could say, or Brad Riddell, in which he choked him out. So I just don't feel like Jalen Turner to me still has a lot to prove, if you ask me. I don't think just because he's 6'3" and because he not submitted Brad Riddell and knocked out Jamie Mularkey that he's all of a sudden like this big next prospect. When he lost to Gamrot and Dan Hooker, I mean, those are both split decisions, but to me, Dan Hooker well handled him, and that should have been unanimous. Gamrot was a little bit of a different story, but he got wrestled. He got absolutely taken down and wrestled by Gamrot. He should be fortunate that Bobby Green's style is not to take you down and wrestle you, because that won't be a threat. So in the end, I see what you're saying. I think you make some good points, but I will say I don't agree that the fight will be finished early. There's certainly a chance, but Bobby Green has 11 decision wins in his career, and of his like, what is it? He has an insane amount. It's like 46 professional fights. 19 of them have gone to decision. That's a relatively big percentage. So I could totally see this going to decision. In fact, if you do predict it correctly and it doesn't finish, I would say that Jalen Turner has the advantage. If we're talking about the fight finishing, I do think Jalen Turner maybe has a slight more of the finishing factor, given that especially in the UFC, before losing these two last fights, he submitted, KO'd, submitted, and submitted his last four opponents. So it does seem to be like Jalen Turner's kind of a submit, knockout, or bust kind of guy. Not at all that I'm labeling him like that, because he's still very young. He's not even 30 years old. He's got a lot to grow on, and show us what he's capable of. But I don't know. As of right now, I think Bobby Green's the better guy with the hotter streak and the better circumstances, just as I mentioned, around the weight cut, the weight class as a whole, and some of the previous opponents.
Yeah, no, for sure. Excellent points you make as well. This one's definitely one we're both going to have to agree to strongly disagree on, because yeah, well, they're both our strongest weights. I have Jalen Turner as my five weight, and you have Bobby Green as your five weight.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if there's consensus money line, best lock, best pick. It'll kind of depends where our four weights land, but we might have to defer this week on an overall lock pick of the week and just let the fans decide who they overall agree with. Because this is, as I mentioned, man, it's a great card, and part of the benchmarks of it being a great card is the fact that you and I can't agree on some of these fights because they're close, man. It's not blowout really for either side in multiple of these fights. It's not even close. But yeah, that being said, since we've covered both of our five weights, we can go ahead and move over to your four weight, Jose.
Yes, so for my four weight, this is the matchup between Beneil Dariush and Arman Tsarukyan. Right now, Arman is the betting favorite at minus 290, while Beneil Dariush is the betting underdog at plus 215. This one, I think, is definitely going to be definitely the one I'm looking forward to the most. Arman looked phenomenal most recently over his win, and while Beneil Dariush, we saw him just lose in the first round to Charles Oliveira, but Charles Oliveira, he's a beast in his own, and I'm excited to see him to fight Islam for the title. So there's no really, I don't think there's any shame in that. In this matchup, man, I think just Beneil, I think time is just not on Beneil's side. To be honest, he had a phenomenal streak since that loss at Alexander Hernandez, but I don't know, Arman. This is a young guy that he's like, possibly the future of the division. And if he gets this win over Beneil Dariush, he's definitely going to be getting pushed for title contention very soon. And he's coming off his own two finishes right now, and he did lose to unanimous decision to Matus Gamrot though last year in June, but he went 5 rounds with them. And I think Arman, he's only been showing to get better and better and better, and that's also been shown against Joaquim Silva, getting that 3rd round TKO, showing that he can get a finish even late in the 3rd round, late into the 3rd round. So I think Arman is just going to is just almost the future of this division. He's only 27 years old. Beneil is 7 years older, so that's what I'm saying. I think the gap is closing in on him. So for this one, that's why I have Arman as the 4-weight. I'm going with the younger guy that I think he's going to be. I think this is definitely going to be the matchup that if he wins, he's definitely going to start being considered for title contention soon. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
It's interesting to hear the discussions on this one, because I think all week the age is the most fascinating topic for this fight to me. And anyone that's listened to us over the last couple of months and years that we've done this show have definitely gotten familiar with our propensity to value experience and a guy who has a lot of time in the cage, specifically, professionally. So it's been fascinating for me to hear the transgressions all week on the age aspect, because everyone seems to think Beneil Dariush is like 55 years old and born in the Stone Age. Beneil Dariush is realistically still in the prime of his career. He is 34 years old. And arguably some of the UFC's greatest have found their peaks and their absolute best to be in their mid-30s. So I get that Tsarukyan has that young blood and that young man's energy that you just don't always get from somebody that's a little further along in their career as Dariush, but I just don't think it's significant enough here to just completely write off Beneil Dariush. So if that doesn't kind of give enough of an indication on where I'm at here, I do have a one weight on Beneil Dariush here. So it does show that I am nervous to be picking against Tsarukyan. So don't get me wrong. I respect Tsarukyan and what he brings, but what I see here is a matchup in which Dariush somewhat should be favored. I mean, at least he should be strongly considered. Think about Arman Tsarukyan's style. He is a decent striker that loves to push the pressure and wrestle. Wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. You cannot find a fight in which Arman Tsarukyan didn't get a takedown and wrestle somebody since 2021. And that includes his loss to Mateusz Gamrot. So Arman Tsarukyan's very clearly looking to get in there, get in your face, strike a little bit, and then wrestle you. I mean, I get that he knocked out Joaquim Silva, but he got rocked himself by Silva in that fight. He had to kind of battle back, and props to him for doing it. And that's part of the reason I'm still a little bit nervous to bet against him. But man, Beneil Dariush is the real deal. I would argue that Beneil Dariush has more power in his striking. I would say that Tsarukyan could be given the credit to being more technical, and Tsarukyan probably uses the leg kicks more. So that being, and that's part of the reason I'm still a little bit nervous to bet against him. Jose, you're playing the recording of our stream on our stream. I would argue that Beneil Dariush has more power in his striking. Hello? That really, Jose was just playing the stream in the background, so I got completely thrown off there. I heard my own voice, and I'm like, "What in the world?"
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. I just started to hear my own voice, and um, that really threw me off. So sorry about that. Um, but I was just trying to explain that I think Beneil Dariush has more power in his striking, and I think Tsarukyan could be argued to be a little bit more technical, and maybe use kickboxing a little bit more. But in the end, I would actually favor Beneil Dariush for a KO if either of these guys are going to get one, and I would also favor Beneil Dariush for a submission if either of these guys were going to get one. One of these guys is a multiple-time no-gi world champion, and that's simple to say is Beneil Dariush. I personally don't want to fade the man after having one bad round against a world-class championship fighter in Charles Oliveira, one of the best lightweights to fight of all time already, and he still hasn't even finished. Sadly, his fight against Islam got canceled. It would have been great to see what he brings to the table in that rematch. But yeah, point is pretty much there. I don't take one round of bad fighting for Beneil Dariush to just knock him, especially against one of the best lightweights of all time, just to knock him off and say, oh, he sucks. He deserves to be a plus 215 underdog. Come on. That is crazy to me. Beneil Dariush is one of the best lightweights on this planet, and even if he doesn't win this fight, Tsarukyan will have gained confidence for him by the end of the fight. I'm confident in that. So, one weight for me on Beneil Dariush. Definitely my least confident pick, but I'm still somewhat, as far as the betting market goes, I wouldn't put a dime on Tsarukyan, mainly because you can't get anything back. He's like almost a minus 300 favorite. You got to bet almost $400 to win 100, and he has to beat Dariush. No, thank you. Absolutely no, thank you. The only thing I would touch on this is the underdog, just because you can get some good value for a guy to me that should not be that big of an underdog. So yeah, that's about all I had to say. I don't know if we got Jose back yet, but if not, I can just move forward to the next picks of the afternoon. Jose, are you with us? I'm not getting anything back from Jose. I imagine he's having some sort of issue on the back end. So, oh, you know what? It's probably because. Hey, are you able to hear me, Jose?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I couldn't before.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got that fixed. Then I'm not sure if you could hear what I was saying, but I was just pretty much giving my one weight. handicap
I,
on
yeah,
Beneil
I had to
Dariush.
listen to like the stream. I think I saw like a muted thing, so I don't know what was up. I think maybe it was like hit on some end, but yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't really hear as much. It was kind of hard. I jumped on the stream, but then I only heard like in between, you know.
Right. Yeah. So
But
without further ado, I think we've covered what we need to for that main event. Unless you have any further points.
no, I like to move on to get to the your four weight.
Perfect. Sounds good. We will go ahead and move right on to my four weight. And the four weight of mine for Saturday afternoon, man, we are going to continue with the absolute hammers, the home runs with these fights. Jose and I are just going to knock out the main three fights of this card back to back to back here, just not in the exact order because my four weight does land on the feature bout of Saturday afternoon. Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo. Obviously, Figueiredo coming up a weight class. And honestly, that's got to be the most intriguing aspect of this fight is the fact that he's coming up a weight class after having only fought one man since 2020. That is just fascinating to me. Granted, he did fight Alex Perez and Joseph Benavidez back in earlier 2020 to get his belt, but late 2020 is when him and Moreno had their first fight, and ever since, that is the only man that Davidson Figueiredo has fought, and he's only beaten once. So that being said, Figueiredo said, I'm done doing this weight cut crap. I want to go up, and he's still going to be cutting some weight, but it's going to be a lot less drastic with 10 less pounds to worry about. But he's getting one of the biggest dogs in this division in Rob Font, a strict boxer. Guy's not going to get much wrestling. He just got out of a fight in which he got wrestled for pretty much 5 straight minutes, and Corey Sandhagen simply got the win by sitting on top of him for 25 minutes. So it's clear the path to beating Rob Font, but I think we can all understand that Figueiredo does have some submission threat. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to be able to just wrestle Rob Font into submission or just wrestle him into a boring conclusion like Corey Sandhagen did. So that's the main part of my handicap here in putting my four weight on Rob Font. Font is the minus 156 favorite. Figueiredo the plus 122 dog. I really think Rob Font is going to just dominate on the feet and make Figueiredo feel like he's got to scramble for takedowns. And as long as Rob Font can telegraph those takedowns, I think he's got just enough a strength in his takedown defense to be able to prevent them. And, in the situation where this fight is on the feet, I am happy to have my money on Rob Font's side. But there's no doubt that Figueiredo poses somewhat of a threat given that he's got so many finishes on his career, but he's been finished, and he got submitted by Brandon Moreno, and then he got knocked out by Brandon Moreno. So I don't think Brandon Moreno is like some sort of black belt, amazing jiu-jitsu, but also super powerful. Like, I just haven't seen something on a Figueiredo that he needs to show, in my opinion, to beat a guy as good as Rob Font. Not to mention there is a size advantage. I think Davison Figueiredo is going to be very strong. So not to take away from his strength, he's just a smaller man. Like, his frame is just genuinely smaller than Rob Font's. And I think in the boxing side of things, that'll take a toll as the fight gets into the third round, assuming it makes it there. So, Jose, what do you got for this?
Yeah, so for this fight, I have Davison Figueiredo, the former champ. He is my three weight, and I'm excited to see him move up. I think he's going to be doing better. I think he's going to perform better, I should say, up a weight class because, as you mentioned, he's going to be cutting less weight. So I'm assuming he's going to be feeling stronger and probably a lot more energetic. And Rob Font, he just completely got, just out wrestled and dominated by Corey Sandhagen earlier this year. And before that, he had an impressive first round win over Adrian Yanez. But then before that, he's also lost twice unanimously to Marlon Vera and Jose Aldo. So this one, I think Davison Figueiredo could win this one as well, unanimously. He doesn't have, Rob Font is, I think, probably the better boxer for sure. He does have a 5.7 significant strike per minute versus Davison Figueiredo's 3.09. So definitely when it comes to the hands, Rob Font is the better striker. But when it comes to grappling, I definitely think maybe Davison Figueiredo is the better grappler in this one. And I think, not, out of his 21 wins, 8 of them come via submission, and Rob Font, he's only been submitted once, and he's, but I honestly think Davis and Ferrero could sneak in a submission as well, or if not, at least win this unanimously. I think Davis and Figueroa moving up is a good thing, and he is an underdog. So to me, that's pretty appealing. Rob Font, just out of his last 4 fights, only winning one of them, and just the way he's lost the other ones just unanimously. I think if Davis and Figueroa plays his cards right, I think he can be able to outpoint and have more control time in general all 3 rounds and win this one unanimously himself. If not, if he finishes it, I don't know if he'll TKO Rob Font, but I can see a possible submission. So for this one, I have Davison Figueroa as my 3-weight.
Interesting, yeah. We'll see, man. This to me really comes down to what can Figgy bring to the table that shows improvements from fighting against Brandon Moreno. As it stands, I think Brandon Moreno versus Rob Font is a good fight as well. Maybe I'm factoring in fighters in a higher weight class too much, right, and giving them too much credit. Maybe Brandon Moreno completely dusts Rob Font, for all I know. But I don't know, man. I really think it's going to be hard for Figgy to ride out a decision here. I could see the submission side of it, maybe, but that requires wrestling, and I'm just not confident in Figgy's wrestling. So that's kind of why I'm leaning. If this is to play out in Font's way, it goes to decision. I don't think either of these guys are capable of getting a KO. Like, they have KOs on their records, obviously, but by saying capable, I mean, like, Rob Font's not the kind of guy you knock out very often. You know what I'm saying? It takes a serious. In fact, Rob Font has actually never been KO'd in his professional career, and Figgy, I don't believe, was KO'd in his professional career either until he fought Brandon Moreno. So these dudes are very, very difficult to stop. I would almost take over 2.5 on this one and take Rob Font.
Yeah, so this is definitely another one we're both strongly disagreeing on. You have Rob Font as your 4-weight, and I have Davison Figueroa as my 3-weight. A lot that we're not agreeing on. So that just brings us over to our 2-weight then. And for this one, this is the welterweight bout between Kevin Gastelum and Sean Brady. Right now, Sean Brady is the betting favorite at -130, while Kevin Gastelum is the betting underdog at +102. For this one, to be honest, even though Kevin Gastelum, he did get a nice unanimous decision win over Chris Curtis, I'm going to go with Sean Brady on this one. He did get TKO by Bilal Muhammad, but I don't think Kevin Gastelum is as good as Bilal Muhammad. The one thing is, I thought Kevin Gastelum was actually a lot older than just 32 for some reason. So that being said, yeah, Kevin Gastelum at 170, he used to be a welterweight, and him being back down now, I want to see a little more of him before I start thinking he's a legitimate welterweight contender again. It possibly could work out for him, but I think Sean Brady, Bilal Muhammad, he's definitely gonna be one of the next guys to get a title shot too. So no shame in that. But before that, he was undefeated, 14-0, and I think Kelvin Gastelum is, he's won and lost a lot, and a lot of the dudes he's lost to are just top tier guys. But he even went split decision loss to Darren Till, and Darren Till is just pretty much terrible. So that being said, but then there's people like Robert Whitaker and Jared Cannonier. I don't think is Sean Brady going to unanimously destroy Kelvin Gastelum? I'm not sure, to be honest. Kevin has 8 losses on his record, and most of them are decision. If Sean Brady wins this, honestly, it's gonna have to be decision. I don't know how unanimously it's going to be, but it's going to be a close one. It's definitely going to be Sean Brady's. I don't think it's going to be as hard as I definitely think Bilal Muhammad was, but he was able to beat Michael Chiesa, who's pretty big too. So that that alone is a big reason why I'm also siding with him on this. I think Sean Brady, I don't think it has been a year too, October 22nd, 2022, since we've last seen him, which is it's kind of concerning. But and Calvin Gastelum fought earlier this year. But that being said, this one I'm going with Sean Brady. Again, he is the favorite in this one at -130, and Kevin Gastelum's the betting underdog at +102. So yeah, actually looking at Kevin Gastelum as a betting underdog too is very attractive. But I'd say because this guy went to toe to toe with Izzy and almost could have won too. So, but that being said, yeah, I have Sean Brady for this one. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Man, I mean, your kind of last couple points there kind of, I guess, segue perfectly into my handicap, and I'll make it pretty quick here for Kevin Gastelum. Obviously, he's got a lot of previous experience, and I think the biggest concern for me here is his weight cut. Dana White had to pretty much kick him out of the welterweight division because he couldn't make weight, and he's going back down to welterweight. We'll see. So this is to me pending on the scales. I will not be putting a dime on this man until I see him succeed on the scales. I think there's a very high likelihood, just like Jalen Turner, that he doesn't make weight, or that it's at least one of the last fighters to come out and make weight, or he needs an extra hour kind of thing. So that being said, if Kelvin Gastelum looks good on the scales and he looks good going into the fight without any issues, I really think he's going to mess with Sean Brady's stand-up game. I think Sean Brady gets his first, or excuse me, Kelvin Gastelum gets a great decision win against Chris Curtis, a great striker who has knockout power. And Sean Brady gets KO'd by Bilal Muhammad, who had no KOs in his previous 12, 15 professional fights and didn't KO anyone since 2016. I don't think Bilal Muhammad, I get it. I have a lot of respect for Bilal Muhammad, but he is a wrestler. He is a good boxer and an amazing wrestler. Bilal Muhammad is not a kind of guy who should be KO people. And I just don't like Sean Brady coming off of the KO loss there. I think Sean Brady's best win is maybe Chiesa back in 2021. We're talking years removed now. So I just don't like what I've seen from Sean Brady as of late. And as you mentioned late there's some good value on Gastelum plus money. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
No, yeah, that's a strong, yeah, that's a good point you make. Yeah, it is the inactivity, but and Kevin Gastelum too. Before his win against Chris Curtis, he was inactive for a bit himself. So
True.
maybe this inactivity though is good. I want to see Sean Brady too weigh in. I want to see who last time against Bilal just looked so big compared to him too. He almost made Sean Brady look like a 155er. So I want to see how if he looks a little bigger this time, because Kevin Gastelum obviously coming down is going to be a big weight too, so that actually isn't going to part of the. And I have Sean Brady as my 2-weight, and
Okay.
Nick, I'm actually gonna have to hop off now. But I know for the next fight, I have Soriano, and he's a big favorite, and I think you have him too, as we briefly discussed. So if you like to take it away from there, the points you make, definitely I 100% obviously endorse too.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say, but yeah, take it easy. Thanks for joining us today, Jose. That's why we try and get these recordings going early so we can get our stuff going while it's still earlier in the day. So we will catch you next week as we get to discuss the UFC pay-per-view event.
Oh yeah, thanks guys.
All right, have a good one, Jose. See you later. But yeah, as Jose was saying, we do have Soriano here, minus 290. This is the fight that is opening the main card. Punahele Soriano is just one of those guys that is coming in. He's only got 12 fights on his professional career, right? He's not the kind of guy who has all this kind of experience, and he's fighting a guy who has a lot more experience, I would say, than he does. Dustin Solfus is almost doubling the amount of professional fights, but Dustin Solfus is kind of the guy that has more of, I feel like, a name than anything else. His only wins are against Joe Pyfer back in 2020, Dana White's Contender Series, before Pyfer was as big as he is now, right? Pyfer's on a great win streak now, but this is way before that. He loses to DeHouse, loses to Rodolfo Vieira, loses to Meerschaert, which I guess those aren't the worst losses. I do have a lot of respect for all those fighters, and he wasn't even getting KO'd by DeHouse. He only lost by decision, so that's respectable. DeHouse has a lot of power, but outputted the double in striking. Finally gets a win against Dwight Grant, only to lose to Abus Magomedov, who has now shown that he really can't hang with a lot of the UFC veterans. Abus comes in as a highly touted veteran from another promotion, gets the win against Stoltzfus, but then loses to Sean Strickland. And it's like, okay, that's the current champ. You can accept a loss to a champ. and he loses to Kyle Baralho by decision. Baralho's a great up-and-coming fighter, but that really, I think, just hammers the nail home in the sense that Abus is just not all that. And Dustin Stoltzfus gets knocked out by him in the first round. I just am not seeing what Dustin Stoltzfus brings to the cage at this point for the UFC. To me, this fight definitely should be dictating whether or not he gets cut. Because look, if he loses this fight, he's 2-5 in the UFC since 2020. How can you justify keeping that around? You would just have to feed him against the newcomers that are coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series that you give a contract to and see what happens. But I don't know. I think Dustin Stoltzfus at this point is more or less just the name from the excitement that he got from his KO win in the Dana White's Contender Series. It was a one-round fight that he got all this notoriety from, and he has done nothing with it. He wins one fight since, and yeah, I'm probably ripping into the guy a little bit more than I need to, but this is why Jose and I have our pick on Soriano. This is one weight for Jose and a 2-weight for me. Soriano is a very heavy favorite here, minus 290. Stoltzfus plus 215. And one thing I do wish to see more from Soriano in this fight is wrestling. Soriano has a good history of wrestling. I believe the base of his fighting is out of wrestling, but he doesn't use it that much in the UFC. He doesn't even average one takedown per 15 minutes. And he actually has a negative striking differential. So it just kind of goes to show, like, yeah, this is one of those fights in which this is just one of those fights in which you wonder how it ended up on the main event. To be honest, some of these other fights on this card look really good. Clay Guida, I guess, is getting kind of old. Joaquim Silva, though, I don't know. Cody Brundage on here. There's some good fights, but I guess the UFC feels that Punahele Soriano and Dustin Stoltzfus bring some of the best heat. I don't necessarily think I agree. They're just not that exciting of fighters unless they're the ones getting submitted or knocked out. That's pretty much how it's worked for both of these guys as of late. Soriano did get the KO against Dalcha Lungiambula, but that's not like some sort of amazing. I mean, his career is 11-6, and he's lost 4 in a row as a pro. So there's really not much there. I think this is honestly one of the least entertaining fights on this card, and just because it's a main event card, we will have a pick on it. And that being said, Jose and I have our pick on Soriano. My 2-weight, Jose's 1-weight. We're really hoping that Soriano does a little bit more wrestling and doesn't just try and stand up and swing with Stoltzfus. As Stoltzfus arguably is a little bit more live for a KO, depending on kind of who you like as their previous opponents. Although there is something to be said for Punahele Soriano having 6 KO wins on his career and Stoltzfus only having 2. So that being said, it just really seems to be all signs pointing to Punahele Soriano. I'd still be a little bit careful putting him in any parlay bets, but you can at least put his name down on a couple of tickets to cushion some of the other bets you might be making. So that will complete our picks for Saturday afternoon. Jose had to take off to get to an appointment, but of course we will be back next week for the main UFC card in December, which will be the final pay-per-view event of 2023. We're getting down to, I think, 3 UFC fight cards remaining. I believe it's 3 because they won't have any cards at the end of the year around Christmas. So this is really getting down to the nitty-gritty of 2023 and closing off the year to see if there's any last-minute fight of the year contenders. So tune in to us next Monday at around 5:30 and to get our picks and winning bets on those. Otherwise, thank you for listening. And until then, have a great week.